This is Duke University.
And so one of the things we're very interested in is thinking about a return to national categories within the concept of ethnic comparison. And I think, at least in the Latin American case, this is particularly striking in the case of Jews and Muslims, where in some ways Jews and Muslims in Latin America are more of a single ethnic category than they are an oppositional ethnic category. And to kind of get there, you have to break out of some of the traditional ideas of what the categories means. We see these kinds of breakdowns in all sorts of ways. Earlier, you were mentioning about the different words that are being used. One of the things we found, we did some work on Moroccan Jews who migrated to the Amazon in the 19th century, and we found this incredible situation in which the nickname for Jews was Arabs, the nickname for Arabs was Spaniards, and it starts to make you wonder, right, what do these categories mean? What does it mean when we find these words being used in either popular culture or in the documents? How do we know precisely what's going on there? And so we're also interested, in addition to this destabilizing of the categories, in kind of asking about flexibility, I guess we'd call it. And by flexibility, I don't mean what in the United States is called passing, right? Because passing is a kind of flexibility, but there's an implication of being a race trader in passing. But we're interested in how people move between categories with great smoothness and are perceived as moving between categories with great smoothness in a normalized way, not in a crazy way. And I want to, again, give a couple of really interesting examples of this. The largest synagogue in Latin America is called the Congregação Israelita Paulista. It's the largest single synagogue in Latin America. It's in Sao Paulo, and it has about 5,000 families who are members. So let's say it has a membership of something like 20,000 people. It's enormous. And in this synagogue, if you go there on a Friday evening, there are large groups of people at the Sabbath evening prayers who are not considered halakhically Jewish, aren't considered formally Jewish by the rabbis. These are people who have come as adults to believe themselves to be Jewish, often because they've converted from Catholicism to evangelical practice, and as part of evangelical practice have come to imagine deep roots, right? Because we talked about authenticity and ancestry is very important. So they come to believe themselves to be the ancestors of so-called secret Jews who migrated to Brazil or Latin America during the colonial period. Now, I don't want to get into what's real and not real because I don't personally, it doesn't matter, but as a scholar, I don't care, right? But the question we want to ask is, how are we going to talk about that group as a research issue? Are we going to say, I can write a Jewish history of people who formally are called by the Jewish community not Jewish? Can I write a history of Arab Brazilians who are people who we can trace no descent from the Middle East at all? We have a colleague, John Karam, who's writing a very interesting project about a very important Arab Brazilian identity maker who he's discovered he's just like some guy who decided this was awesome, right? But it's a serious question, right? Are we going to throw those people out? Or are we going to put those people in? And we're spending a lot of time thinking about the implications of that. What does it mean for our studies when we kind of use insider-outsider categories as opposed to let's say everybody's an insider. Another example of this that's quite fantastic. We were before we came here at a workshop at Emory that had to do with sports, and one of the keynote lecturers was from a colleague of ours, David Shanin in Trent University, and he gave a talk that was called something like "The End of Jewish Boxing" or something like that, in which he talked about all these famous U.S. Jewish boxers who had names like what were they called? The Jewish Butcher, and like fantastic names, and would wear stars on their trunks. These are professional boxers who turn out to have had a choice in a certain part of their lives. Are they going to use their father's name, which isn't a Jewish name, or are they going to choose a different name, which is a Jewish name, as part of their identities, right? And he's asking the question, do we call these Jewish boxers, or don't we call them Jewish boxers? And he ended up with what I think is my favorite line that I've heard in a lecture in a long time. He ended up his talk and he said, and I haven't told you today about Argentina's greatest Jewish boxer. Her name is Carolina Dur. She hasn't lost a fight in 7 years, and her nickname is the Turk. La Turca, right? So again, are we going to put her in the Arab, right? Do we call this a study of Syrian Lebanese? Do we call this a study of Jews? Or perhaps what we're suggesting is maybe these categories aren't very helpful, right? Maybe there's other kinds of categories we can generate.
Produced by Duke University, online at duke.edu.